In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. You got a belly up to the bar, we've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back tonight. It's Thursday, March 28th. March is almost over. When I see you guys next week, it'll be next month. March 28th, the year of our Lord, 2019. Blaine is going to be your bartender tonight. He pours with the best of them, and the lava lamp is in fact lighted, which you can see over the microphone to my left, your right. That means that you can watch the show on the Redcon 1 Media Network. Go to Redcon 1 Media on Facebook Live, also on the SHR Media Network Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. You can also listen and chat in the chat room at shrmedia.com. Already, we've got Mike and the Alaskan in chat. Welcome to you guys. Appreciate it. I got to tell you this, though. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation, politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the Saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. All that we ask is that you flush the toilet. Jiggle the handle. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Tonight, in the Saloon, hour one is going to be with the underground professor. We've had him on before. That's Professor Michael Jones, who is a con law scholar, a constitutional law scholar. We've had him on before. And I wanted to have him back specifically to reintroduce him, so to speak, to the new Redcon 1 listeners. And again, thanks to Big Sarge for allowing me to Bigfoot his Facebook page and simulcast the show on SHR Media's Facebook page, and also Redcon 1 Media, their Facebook page as well. So welcome to everybody there. Welcome to everyone listening live. Welcome to everybody who plays this in podcast, because I get a lot of people who play this in podcast. Also, to the truckers of America. You keep America moving, and thanks for listening to me live. A lot of folks listen to me in podcast. Thank you very much for that. Greatly appreciate it. In the first hour, as I indicate, we're going to have Professor Michael Jones on. I'll be calling him up in just a minute or so. In the meantime, in hour two, and I guess, darn it, you're just going to have to wait for it, two stories broke. One of them was a large story that broke over Fox. Another one is a story that I had to dig for. But it's not, I can almost guarantee you, it will not be released, I don't know, maybe tomorrow or the next day in the mainstream media. The American media maggots are going to make sure that information like this doesn't get out, and it has to do with the state of Illinois and a particular case that's involved in the state of Illinois. Kind of a bombshell, I believe, and I will tell you about that at the beginning of the second hour. But for the first hour, we're going to have Professor Michael Jones on, And with luck, crossed fingers, because you know how technology rolls with me.
Please leave your message for 81.
Okay. Let's try that once more with feeling. There we go. Now we're getting a ring. Anyway, Michael Jones, are you there, sir? Are you there, sir? Okay. All right, that went away. Let me try one more time. For some reason, when I call cell phones, it takes me 2 times to get somebody. And as I wrote in the chat room earlier, I said, I hope the cell phones work.
Mushi Mushi.
Mushi Mushi. Michael Jones, is that you, sir?
Hi, Desne. Minnesota Katawara Masen Desne.
Ohio gozaimasu.
Oh, no, I just said you're very happy sounding for a fat man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. We are twin brothers from distant mothers, because what happened is I got the avoirdupois and you got the height out of the situation.
Yeah.
But
Well, you got the looks, I got the height, yeah.
No, you got the looks and the height, and then I got the roundness of it all. Because I'm in shape. Round is a shape, if I'm not mistaken.
That is right.
So
and they say the body's a temple, and some people have 6-pack abs. You have a keg.
I do have a keg for abs. Damn, mister, you're insightful. That's absolutely correct.
They won't recognize us now because I shaved my beard.
No, you didn't.
I had that flu for 9 weeks, and I just couldn't stand it anymore, and I shaved it. And it's coming back. It's pretty nice, but I don't have that huge long beard anymore.
You shaved your beard?
Yeah, the one thing I thought I'd never do in my life again.
I'm devastated. I'm absolutely devastated. Okay, folks, this is... it'll only take you a couple of years. Folks, this is Professor Michael Jones, and I wanted to have him on tonight because I'm on a secondary network. I'm on the SHR Media Network, and I'm also on Redcon 1 Media. And the people at Redcon 1 have not heard of Michael Jones before. They don't know who you are.
Like him.
And I do too. He's one of my faves. And they haven't heard of you, they don't know what you do, and they don't know why they need to listen to you. And I'm going to provide all that information to the host of New People tonight and introduce you to a whole host of new listeners and watchers, because I'm being videoed. We're simulcasting on 2 networks, and I'm also on Spreaker as well. So I want to welcome Professor Michael Jones to the show. Now, the dealio is that Professor Jones is basically a constitutional law expert and scholar. He's been teaching for quite some time. Used to have his own show, which was all about constitutional law. And so if I have any questions about the U.S. Constitution, and I know exactly where I can go, and I do have some very salient questions tonight. But because this is the first time that you've been on Redcon 1, what I'd like to do is have you just introduce yourself, tell folks a little bit about you, where you're from, that kind of thing. But before we do that, though, do you have any social media or any sites that you'd like to talk about right now to promote? Because now is the perfect time.
Everything got shut down. In the last year, I haven't renewed or done anything.
Okay.
I have fallen off the grid. Can you believe that?
Oh.
Literally fallen off the grid.
That is very sad. That is very sad.
Yeah, well, I'm actually putting my ancestral home, which we've had. There's been 4 generations lived in this house, and I'm putting it up for sale, and I'm going to move to Utah, and under the threat that my daughter said she'll start having grandbabies if I'll do that, because she's afraid, with everything going on with me, that health-wise, that she can't monitor me, so she wants me to move up to Utah, and so I'm going to do that, and with the promise that whatever I get to put a studio in that place and start my show up again. So eventually, this is all going to come back, but not until I move and do all that nonsense.
Well, that would be beautiful.
And I had 9 weeks of flu, and about 3 weeks ago, a very lonely and rejected brown recluse found love in my crock of my arm and bit me 3 times. God. Yeah, and so I've had to deal with the flu, my back being out, and then a brown recluse thing. And when I got up out of bed one day, a few days ago, I fell and hurt my hip. So now I'm on a cane and can barely walk. So it's been a pretty violent year so far for me.
God, and it's only March. Yeah, it's almost April, but my God, only March. Well, you're in Texas right now, if I'm not mistaken.
That is true. I'm in God's country still. I haven't moved or anything. I'm still in my little 5 acres, out here in the middle of nowhere.
Well, if you would, tell folks a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised, that sort of thing. And also, because it's very important to the topic tonight, also your education.
Well, I was born a black sharecropper's kid.
I know that.
Yes.
A poor black child.
And yes. I got better. But, I'm kind of like the opposite of Michael Jackson. He was born a small black boy and died a rich white woman.
Essentially.
So I'm kind of the opposite. But okay, seriously, I was born in Roswell, New Mexico, of all places. I don't know if I've ever told you that.
No, I did not know.
Yep, I was born right after the Roswell incident. No, can neither confirm nor deny any coincidental materials there.
Okay.
And
for those who don't know, that was 1947, because I just happen to know the Roswell incident. You want to hear something strange?
About that?
No, you want to hear something strange about that?
Always.
My dad was at Roswell Army Airfield in 1947. I didn't discover that until the late 80s, early 90s. And also, the thing that was kind of weird that I'm still attempting to assemble how this occurred is we lived on base at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where allegedly the bodies and the materials from the Roswell saucer crash in New Mexico were taken. And apparently I was living right on top of, people were saying it was Hangar 18, but it's actually Building 18.
Building 18, yeah.
It was just a strange conglomerate of circumstances. But I find that very interesting that you were born in Roswell.
Well, we have some more ties, too, because my uncle was a policeman, and he was first on scene at the Roswell incident.
Wow.
And to his dying day, he would not talk about it. He would not confirm, deny. He wouldn't nudge or wink or anything, any information. Whatever they said to him stuck, and he died without revealing any information about the Roswell incident to family.
It was also funny about that you mentioned that, because my dad passed away in 2009 at the age of 88. And it seemed that he was a bomber pilot at the 8th Air Force in World War II, survived all his missions, came back, began teaching people as an instructor pilot in B-25s, which is really weird because he flew B-17s and they made him instructor pilot in B-25s. That's the Air Force
that
for
wasn't
you.
Strange back then.
I don't know. That seems really weird to me right now. In any event, it seems as though he followed this kind of thing all through his career. It was just... And I began to associate Roswell with him, and I began to ask him questions, especially after he went into the hospital for a major surgery the first time. And just like your, you said uncle?
Yeah, uncle,
just like
uncle, something like that. Yeah.
Just like your uncle, I began to, because Dad was medicated. Dad was seriously medicated, and I thought, if there's a perfect time to ask Dad about something like this, I started to prod him a little bit about Roswell. And even though he was on whatever the hell he was, he would not say a thing. I knew for a fact he was in Roswell. He acknowledged that, but I started to ask him other questions. He wouldn't say a thing. That's part of that generation.
You will find anybody that actually was involved in the Roswell incident hasn't talked. So anybody that does talk, you can automatically assume had nothing to do with the Roswell incident. It's kind of like, those of us in special ops. You go to a bar and everybody seems to be a Navy SEAL, and you can pretty much be sure that none of them are.
Yeah.
It's because those that are in special ops, we just don't talk about it. We don't give details, unless you're, a fellow member of the community, you don't talk about it.
That's a perfect transition for. First, let me go this way. You were where did you get your education? Where did you go to university? Well,
there was a lot of cereal boxes and decoder rings involved.
Okay, as there should be.
Yeah, I was in the military, and so I went to colleges all over the planet, wherever I was stationed.
Okay,
but probably the stuff you really want to know. I went to Texas Wesleyan and got a Bachelor of Science in Political Science.
Okay.
UTA went and got me a MA in Political Science.
All right.
And then I went to university. I stayed at UTA, and I went to North Texas up there in Denton.
All right.
And I went and I've never completed a dissertation, but I have taken enough classes to have. If I finished a dissertation, I'd have a PhD in history, government, and in philosophy.
Okay.
And I chunked all that because I wanted to go get one in theology. and then life happened, divorces and divorce, and the rest of it, and just never went back. Kind of sad, but anyway, I have enough for 3 PhDs. And they call it ABD, all but dissertation. And all that means is I just didn't write a book explaining my crackpot theory on something.
The reason I wanted to emphasize that is when I speak to you and we get into some topics about the Constitution and some other aligned topics, I want people to understand that when I'm talking to you about things like this, you are highly intelligent, you are highly informed, and you are highly educated. And it is upon all of that that I predicate all these questions, and the reason that I really enjoy having you on the show all the time. Now, you mentioned the military, and I know for a fact you served in the military. You mentioned special operations. I'm not going to ask you about that, but can you give sort of an overall background of your service in the military?
Well, roughly I spent 10 years, 9 months, 15 days, and 8 hours in the Air Force.
Okay.
And I was in electronic warfare and started off my career in RC-135s, reconnaissance, Burning Wind and all those, and Rivet Joint Rudder, and then I finished up Burning Wind and Subways. There's some names I haven't used in so long, I'm not sure I'm getting them right. EC-130s, the electronic countermeasure planes.
Right.
And that was the bulk of my career there. And went all around the world, constantly QDY somewhere, and spent a lot of time in Asia and Europe. And what else? I did that whole Panama thing when we went after Pineapple Head, as Rush Limbaugh calls him.
Right.
And I did a few other things. I went to Desert Shield, and Desert Storm. And then I got out in November-ish of, what was it, 91? Yeah.
Okay.
After all that, decided to call it quits because I had a brand new baby girl that was born in March of 91, and decided I kind of wanted to live long enough to see her grow up. I thought she deserved to have a dad, so I got out of the military, hung up the dangerous spurs, and then became a bum.
Yes, but a really intelligent bum, and I'm not acknowledging that. You're not a bum. You're a fabulous guy. I got to go back and tell folks about you a little bit. I had no idea who you were, and I was getting back into radio in 2016. I retired in 2016 after 41 years in law enforcement. So in 2016, I also went to Freedom Fest in Las Vegas with Sackhead Sean and Sackhead's Clint. I was the third guy at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas in July, because Las Vegas, nothing says heat like Las Vegas in July, baby, at Planet Hollywood, and that is where I met you. And then we had some great times on the air.
Wait a second.
Yes?
You said you were in law enforcement, but did you tell everybody you were a female body inspector?
Okay. All right. I'll own
That's
that.
Right. FBI, right?
I'll
female
own that.
I saw the shirt. You were wearing it.
I used to work for the FBI, and I used to work for the U.S. Marshal, and then I left the federal service and went to a county sheriff's department on the ocean, on the coast of California.
Which had to be. That's, I think, the coolest job ever, by the way.
Yeah, okay. It was, that's one of the things where I got into my critical incident, my shooting there for that coastal county.
Oh.
And then I spent...
well, I haven't met a sheriff that's under 300 pounds, and I love to eat, so I just figured that's got to be a great job for a sheriff.
And then I spent my last 35 years before I retired in 2016 working for the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, about a 2,200 deputy department, and that is where I retired. But having said that, going back to you've got some excellent training, you've got some excellent education, you've got some excellent experience. Through all of that and your education, and you're on the cusp of acquiring essentially 3 PhDs. What made you interested in the U.S. Constitution? Because that really is your specialty, is it not? Are you there, sir? Okay. All right. Let's try it one more time and see if I can get Michael Jones here. Something happened.
Please leave your message for 817.
No, I'm not going to let the number out on the air. Let's try it one more time. Here we go. Because something happened with his cell phone, apparently. There we go.
Okay, I'm a big fat idiot. I adjusted my ear thing, and evidently you can't touch it. It hangs up.
Okay. Well, it works. Let me tell you, it works. But the question
I'm so sorry, everybody.
That's okay. That's okay. No big deal. Listen, I am a techno-Luddite. Everybody knows that listens to the show. So this is expected, okay? If it were perfect, that would be the oddity. So the question that I was going to ask is, you're on the cusp of acquiring 3 PhDs. Your specialty is the U.S. Constitution, essentially all the founding documents and all the related documents. What made you interested in the U.S. Constitution? What made you focus on that?
Well, the fact is, what made me focus on it was that so few people have read it and understand it.
Boy,
even less.
Yes.
And it dawned on me that I've always kind of been fascinated with the Revolution. The Revolutionary War of America, or as I like to call it, the War of Insurrection, because that's what the British call it. But I've always been fascinated with that period, and so I, voraciously read anything, kind of like Abraham Lincoln. I was self-taught, reading books and papers, and one day I heard some talking heads who somehow got paid lots of money and kept their jobs, talking about the Constitution on one of those Sunday shows back when I still paid attention to them.
Okay.
The political shows on Sunday. And I realized everything they were saying was wrong. And made it worse, he was a Republican. What made it worse was he was a self-claimed conservative. And
oh, boy.
I thought, wait, if our side can't get it right, then why are we complaining about the wrong side getting it wrong? they shouldn't be expected to understand the Constitution, since it's pretty much an impediment to everything they want to do.
That's the truth.
Yeah. So I thought, well, what's the deal here? So I went and I said, I can't, he should be right. I must have got this wrong. So I went and looked up my information, got my notes out, and pulled out the notes on the constitutional debate and the ratification, debates in the, 13 different colonies and or states, rather. They were states at that time, recognized by Britain as independent countries, each one by the treaty that we signed with him in Paris. And so I started looking at all this stuff and realized, no, I was right, he was wrong. And so I started digging in more and more and figured, maybe our side just needs to be taught. What I found was no one wants to really know the Constitution, because when you do have certain knowledge of the Constitution, it becomes limited and binding, exactly as it was designed to be. But as long as you can throw some words out there and people think you're talking on their side, and you speak in such a way, and this is the beautiful thing about politicians, most of them will speak to you in such a way where you fill in what you really want to hear. They'll say some stuff, but you're the one supplying the ideas.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what makes them dangerous. Like all of a sudden the Democrats are constitutional experts on the 25th Amendment. And other nonsense, is if they want something and they can figure out a way to make the Constitution work their way, then they're very pro-Constitution. They're very pro-Constitutional when it comes to, say, the media having their First Amendment rights, but not so much people like us having our First Amendment rights. And they're very pro-Constitutional, and think that there's nothing more important than that. But when it comes to like our Second Amendment rights, then they seem to think that they have the right to trample over all of it, even though the very first words out of the Second Amendment are "Congress shall make no law." And somehow they found a way around that. I didn't know there was a way around "shall make no law," but oh well. So people like me became dangerous and the enemy of the state because we started pointing out both sides were wrong, and that's when I quit being Republican and decided I was just going to be a constitutionalist. And so, for a while, people were calling me, but when they found out that all I ever did was contradict their other guests and stuff, no one wanted to see or talk to me anymore. Those pesky facts and stuff got in the way of a good show.
We got 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes before the bottom of the hour break, and when we come back, what I'd like to do is get something out of the way. That you just mentioned that both sides of the aisle, Democrats and the Republicans, are telling us what this country is. And what they're saying it is precisely what it isn't. You should be.
Well, no, actually, no, you're wrong there, sir. They are telling you exactly what it is. It's just not what the founding fathers set it up to be.
Okay.
But it is exactly what it is today because that's what they've made it.
But you would be proud of me. I think you're about to be proud of me because if there's one thing that I've learned from you is what this country is supposed to be. It is supposed to be a constitutionally federated republic. Is that correct?
My work here is done. Take me, Lord.
I know. It is kind of shocking, isn't it?
Yeah. And if you poll your audience, you're going to find out that almost none of them, if any of them, even knew that.
Yes. So when we come back, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Professor Michael Jones what this country is. Is it a democracy? And if not, why not? Is it a republic? And if it's a republic, well, what is a republic? And then we're going to go to some more salient questions after that. Folks, you're listening to Professor Michael Jones, who is my esteemed guest tonight. I am BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin. You're listening to the Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, simulcast on Redcon 1 Media and also the SHR Media Network. You can listen and chat at shrmedia.com. Going to go on a break. Be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where tonight I have a very special guest, a highly educated and insightful professor of constitutional law, Professor Michael Jones. We're talking to him live from the great state of Texas. And one of the things that I wanted to ask Professor Jones is this. People continuously try to tell me and others on the media, all through any amount of media, social media, on the television, on the internet, etc., that by God, the United States is a democracy. Well, if there's one thing I've learned from Professor Jones is, no, it isn't. It is a constitutionally federated republic. So perhaps, Professor Jones, you could explain to everybody why it isn't a democracy and why it is a republic. And why does that matter?
Well, first, allow me to say that the Agitated Blind Guy is a dear friend of mine and a great show. So you should catch that if you guys are new to this and just heard that commercial.
Yes, Dave. Yes.
Yeah. The Agitated Blind Guy, or whatever he calls himself now.
He is agitated.
Let me say, he's a good friend of mine, but I haven't been too good a friend to him, I think, because with my sickness and everything, I haven't talked to anybody. You're the first person I've talked to. You know that?
Wow.
In months.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since the last time I was on one of your shows. I don't think I've talked to anybody since then. I've been just, miserable. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I consider that a compliment.
Praying that God healed me to praying he'd just go ahead and screw it and take me. And I quit talking to anybody on the phone. Okay. CFR, Constitutionally Federated Republic. So a democracy is mob rule, isn't it? And that's what the Founding Fathers called it. And they were very against it. Now, every now and then you'll see some reference to it, even by the founders, or they'd say democracy, but what they mean is self-rule when they say things like that. They used to refer to things like the central government, which would mean the government in Washington, D.C., and then the state governments, 13 to 50 or 57 or 9 or whatever many Obama thinks there are, state governments
right.
Would be, the local governments. And this is important because that's part of what our government was designed to be, was that we would have a central government and then we would have all the state governments. And what's that statue of Justice, Lady Justice, and she's got the scales, right?
Right.
And of course, having been through the judicial system on multiple sides, I realize that those scales are broken and they're welded to wherever they are. They don't actually move. But if you take scales like that and you put Washington, D.C., central government, in one plate, and then you took the 50 other state governments, and put them in the other plate, then the scale should balance. Okay? And it doesn't matter how many state governments you add or subtract, it's still the state governments should fill one plate and central government should fill the other, and they're kind of co-equal. And just like everything else the Founding Fathers did with the Constitution, this was a separation of power and a balance of power and a sharing of power. And throughout the Constitution, you will see this, that they balanced power, they shared power amongst different groups, and they isolated power amongst certain groups. And the isolation of power is how we separated them so that no one group or person should ever become too powerful. It was a protection, a wise one, one that we ruined with amendments to the Constitution. The Republicans came in and did a lot of damage post-Civil War. And they did this in an altruistic manner, the 14th, et cetera, amendments, because they were trying to force Democrats to treat black people as human beings. And, and instead of using a fly swatter to kill flies, they were using a shotgun approach to kill flies. And then, the end results are now the Democrat Party, which is still the party of racism, is using those very amendments against, and for racist purposes still. But what we got is a constitutionally federated republic. What does that mean? Well, people say that we have a republic. They're not wrong, but they're just not adequately describing our government. In my opinion, if you use the term constitutionally federated republic, you explain the government that we have. If you take one word and leave it out, or you add another word, you have ruined it because you have watered it down or you have made it something that it's not. Constitutionally federated republic. We have a constitution. It was ratified, and the only time in America where everybody got involved and passed a law, okay, like a democracy. That was the one democratic moment of this country's history, was that the country came together and ratified the Constitution, okay? So we have a written document that does not empower government, it limits government, because we, the people, are the sovereigns in this country.
Yes.
Right? So we're not empowering government at all with the Constitution. And when you hear someone say that, then they're just trying to fool you into thinking that something else they're going to say is true too.
Could you call
What
that?
it did?
Could you call that something like positive versus negative rights?
That gets into that, yeah. Obama kind of and some other professors from the left came up with this concept of negative rights and positive rights, and they say that the Constitution is just riddled full of negative rights. Well, no. What it's doing is trying to protect the individual's rights. And, you can see the argument that they make about positive and negative rights, but I don't subscribe to that theory at all. You either have rights or you don't, okay? And if it's not a right, then it doesn't matter if you put the word positive or negative in front of it. Like, for instance, it's not a right if you can take it from me, okay? So, like, you have a vehicle, but do you have a right to drive? The answer is no.
No, it's a privilege.
Right. You have to get insurance, you have to get certified, you have to take driver's training. You do any small infraction, you can get ticketed. You have to get a license to drive. You have to have car insurance. All these restrictions and hoops you got to jump through to get on the road. And in California, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
So it's a privilege. It's not a right. Now, do you have a right to bear arms? The answer is
yes.
Yes. Now, the government can take away your privilege of driving, but they cannot take away my right to bear arms. They cannot do it unless a very unusual circumstances. For instance, I'm crazy, certified by a medical doctor, and I've gone through jurisprudence. I've gone through a legal system, and I've had my day in court, and I've had legal representation. That maybe they can restrict it, but they can only restrict it on an individual basis. They cannot restrict it on a group basis.
Okay.
And they have to have just cause to restrict my rights. For instance, if I'm an ex-con, and the founding fathers recognized that if you went to jail, you probably didn't need to have a gun when you got out. And you just become another menace to society again. If you were mentally unbalanced, you probably shouldn't have it because you cannot discern right from wrong and the proper time and restraint of using a weapon. Okay? But other than, those two kind of exceptions, the government has no business telling you can or cannot have it. Now, they make laws, and they've restricted your use, but did you lose the right to bear arms? No. Because where does a right come from? And that's important. Where do rights come from?
Rights come from, and I'm going to stun everyone here, because this is another thing that I learned from you. Rights come from God, not from government.
Bingo.
From God.
Right. If government can give you the right, then government can take it away. But the founding fathers, even ones who didn't like guns, all recognized one thing, and it's in their writings. Even the ones who didn't think the Second Amendment was a good idea. And there were a lot that didn't think the Second Amendment was a good idea. There were a lot of them that thought the Second Amendment was a bad idea because they thought this would imply that government could in some way, shape, or form affect your right to have a gun. Believe it or not. The majority of people against the Second Amendment were afraid that in the future we would become so stupid as to think government had a right to regulate our weapons. And, of course, that could never happen, right?
No. Nah. Oh, no.
Right. Nah. So, and there were, of course, a handful of people who thought the Second Amendment was a bad idea because, they thought that it would be too hard to decide who could have a gun and who couldn't. But God already figured that out for the most part. And local government, not Congress, because Congress shall make no law. It was widely understood that loco in parentes, that your parent, the closest parent you had, like your mom and dad, or in this case, when they say it, they mean your government of your township or your village or your city. And they don't mean the state government, and they don't mean the county government. They mean the government that knows you. Of course, imagine back when people in government still knew people because they lived in those cities, and those cities were small, when everybody knew each other. But the idea is that that's the level of government where you have to go and defend your right to keep a weapon if that government says that you don't have a right to it. Not the CIA, not the FBI, not the NSA, not Congress, not the state legislature, not the county, your local government. Okay? And that's just because God gave you this right, and none of those other groups have a right to take it away without knowledge of the individual, and that that the individual is dangerous in some fashion and needs to have it restricted for the protection of the public, safety. Okay? So no one can take your right away. And in a way, the Supreme Court gave a nod to this when the Obama administration tried to tax ammunition to the point where no one could afford to buy a bullet for their pistols anymore. If you recall, they tried to do that. And the Supreme Court came down and says, wait a minute, you have a right to bear arms, and if you ban ammunition or won't regulate and license ammunition makers, or you tax them to the point where they're unaffordable, then you are in effect preventing people the ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights. And therefore, that's unconstitutional, which surprised me that the Supreme Court actually ruled in that way. And I just said something out of habit, which frustrates me, because I said your Second Amendment rights. The rights don't come from the Constitution, as we were just talking about. They
Correct.
come from God. The Founding Fathers, in crafting the Constitution, merely recognized God's handiwork and wanted the people that came later in government to realize their ability to influence or to legislate things that weren't those rights. And so, I think it's a misspeak to say that you have a constitutional right to this or that, because no, the Constitution merely recognizes those rights, and those rights come from God. And if you empower the Constitution to contain your right to something, then of course government is ruled by the Constitution and therefore can change the Constitution and therefore can change your right. But there is no way that we can pass an amendment to the Constitution, like say people want to repeal the Second Amendment. Well, that won't get rid of your right to bear arms. That would just get rid of the Second Amendment, because your right to have a weapon did not come from the Constitution, and it didn't come from the Second Amendment. It came from God. You follow me?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's
I know some of this is new ground between us, so
no,
I'm not sure.
That's foundational information that, as you said at the beginning of the hour, so many people don't understand, and it's because they don't want to understand it.
Mm-hmm. So, as I see the clock here ticking, I'm talking too much. We have a Constitution, Federal Republic. Constitution limits the power of our government and tells them what we, the sovereigns of this country, will allow the government to do. Now, we've allowed them to do anything they want, so that's become superfluous, but it's still there. Federated, as I explained earlier, the central government versus the state governments are on an equal platform. And you hear of terms like nullification, state nullification. I happen to think that that's probably correct. And Jefferson and others did too. And that is that if the central government comes up with something and the state governments say this is horrendous, then if the majority of state governments override the central government's idea, then that is no longer a law of the land. All right? Now, people tell you you're crazy if you think like that. Okay? I'll go right back to that. Do not let me forget to say something about that. But let me finish the CFR.
Okay.
A republic. Okay? A republic is a government where the sovereigns of the country do not rule themselves. Okay? What it means is that we, the sovereigns, we, the people of this country, elect or hire managers, not bosses, not leaders, certainly not masters. What we do is we hire managers to go run the busy work of our government, to decide how many paper clips need to be bought, to make sure that our military is staffed and trained and where it needs to be, and et cetera. So a republic is that we, the people, the sovereigns of this country, hire from ourselves people to go to government to represent us at all levels, whether it's, city government or county or state or the central government in Washington. And that's what a republic is that people are hired to do the political dirty work so that we can go do the other things that make this country great and prosperous, and that is all the dentists and dental technicians and people who run the movie projectors at theaters and Mexican food employees, God bless them. And then all the other people in America that have jobs too. And, so that's the constitutionally federated republic. Now, if you're out there and you think I'm crazy, then define it yourself. Because if you leave any of those out, you're not encapsulating what our government actually is. And if you try to stick one more word in to sound more clever than me, then you miss the boat too, because you're adding stuff that doesn't need to belong. We have a constitution, we are a federated government, and we are a republic. And that's it, hands down. That's what it is. Now, I was just saying something, and I said, don't let me forget. What was it? Remember?
Damn.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
That was important, too. Oh, man, that would have been a good point, too. What was I saying? Crap.
Well, can you tell us why it isn't a democracy? People are more and more insisting that this nation is a democracy. It's not a democracy. Well, okay, if it's a democracy, then can you define a democracy for us and tell us this isn't a democracy?
Yeah, that's kind of like a Saul Alinsky kind of crap, I'm not saying he started that, but it's like his stuff. The reason you hear the word democracy all the time is because the left, the commies, as I used to call them, want you to forget what kind of government you really have. Because if you don't know your rights, you won't defend them. If you don't know what kind of government you have, then you'll accept whatever government that is defined for you, because you don't know enough to know that they're telling you the wrong thing. Kind of like what I was saying about those idiot politicians, and I thought, wait a minute, they're telling me the wrong thing, and I was right. A democracy, the founding fathers considered mob rule. If we had a democracy, then every stinking decision that's made in Washington, we as a country would all have to come together and vote. All right? And I mean, like, if we wanted a Supreme Court nominee from Trump, then the entire country would have to go to the polls and vote for that guy. And we would have to vote for an expenditure increase in paper product supplies that Congress uses. And we would have to go and vote. And we would be, in this country, voting about, 10, 12 times a day, if we're being serious. You know how hard it is to get people to go to vote once every couple of years in this country.
No kidding.
And if we were an actual democracy, we'd have to vote on everything. Every eligible voter would be required to go and vote on every vote. And, Congress, you see them up there, they're voting all the time, right? Well, we'd have to vote for them, too, because we wouldn't be a republic. They wouldn't be up there voting for us. So we would have to approve. They would have to come up with something and say, okay, we want to start building F-30s as the newest fighter aircraft. Okay, well, then they would put that up for a proposal, and then the entire country would have to go to the polls and vote whether we were going to get F-30s or not for fighter aircraft. And, and it sounds absurd, and that's exactly what it is. It's absurd, and this is why the Founding Fathers didn't want it. And in a democracy, one of the nasty little things, one of the things that the Founding Fathers worked very hard at in the Constitution was to protect the rights of the minority, okay, the political rights of the minority. That was important to them. In a democracy, 50 plus 1 wins every vote, and there are no minority rights. So if the majority of people come together and decide that, we're no longer going to use toilet paper because we're killing the rainforest, and 50% of the country votes that way, and one extra guy says yes to, then toilet paper disappears off of the shelves of all of our stores. And that's it. That's all it takes. And that's one of the things that the Founding Fathers were very much against, was the ability of a simple majority dictating to the entire country over everything, how everything was going to be. And one of the fears was that if we did that, there'd be no end to it, because the first party that had power, of course, they didn't call them parties back then, and referring to them as factions isn't exactly correct, but close enough for what we're talking about. But the first party in power then makes all the new rules, because they could get a majority. And then the party out of power would never be in power ever again, because, they could just legislate them out of existence. And that's not what we want to have happen. So democracy is a dangerous thing. It worked in some of the, and I only say some, of the small nation states of Greece, because they were small and everybody knew each other. And the democracy wasn't everybody in the city, by the way. It was only, people who had a certain amount of money and were white and a citizen and had land and, things like that. And I'm not altogether sure that that's completely a bad thing, by the way, Bobcat. I think maybe we ought to have a rule that if you get a check from the government, you should not be allowed to vote. And you should see how that would change our government. Because if they can't buy your vote with welfare, then what good are you to them? The Democrat Party overnight would change everything about its philosophical and moral standings. And I think, you shouldn't be able to vote if you can't speak English, and if you aren't a citizen, and you're not over a majority of age, and you're not getting a check from government. I think you should be allowed to vote. Yeah. All right. Golly, there's something I was trying to tell you that was important. I wanted to get back to that. Now I don't know what it is.
Ah, son of a gun. Professor
you might
Mike,
have to listen to it in replays there, and ask me next time.
Professor Michael Jones, let me ask you this. We got about a minute and a half or 2 minutes before the top of the hour. I'm going to take a break. You are followed like crazy in chat. People are asking me questions, and a lot of the people that are in chat are saying, can you hold him over at least after the break to have him discuss one very critical point? And so I'm wondering if I can hold you over the break and then ask you about the Electoral College and the attempt by the Democrats to remove the Electoral College. One of my critical questions is, number one, can you explain the Electoral College? And number two, does that ability exist to constitutionally remove the Electoral College? And if so, to what length would you have to go in order to do that? So can you hang on for a little bit after the break, and then we can address the Electoral College?
Yeah, I'll do that. And let everybody in chat know that I'm single and I love rich, skinny girls.
Okay, great. And long walks on the beach. Don't you? I'm pretty sure.
Short walks. Yeah, short walks.
Short walks off long piers?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, well, that's usually what I end up doing, yes.
Okay. Folks, we're talking to Professor Michael Jones, and he is a constitutional scholar. We're going to go to a break, and we will be right back after this, and then we're going to ask him about the Electoral College and why it's critical. We were talking about a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. Well, what happens if you remove the Electoral College? Folks, we're going to be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the Bloviating Zeppelins Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. Here, you spell it with a K. I'm 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the Capitol building in Sacramento, Fornicalia, where at night, when I get through with the show, I open that door right over there and I can smell the stench, the noxious stench of sulfur and brimstone from the evil that emanates nightly from that and daily from that building at 10th and L. Folks, we're talking to Professor Michael Jones. He resides currently in the great, fantastic Lone Star State of Texas. Isn't that right, Dan Butcher? And having said that, I wanted to ask kindly, and Professor Jones acquiesced and agreed. I'd like to talk about the Electoral College. And the reason that that's an issue is because the Democrats now are making it an issue in terms of they want to rip out the Electoral College wholesale. And as a matter of fact, it's not just Democrats. Ruth Bader Ginsburg has made no qualms whatsoever in saying that she doesn't believe that the U.S. Constitution is a good document for any other nation. Further, she believes the Electoral College should be ripped out by the roots as well. So first...
She's a Democrat.
Yeah, no kidding. First, Professor Michael Jones, can you tell us what is the Electoral College and why it's not just important, but it's critical to this United States?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many hours of radio on my own show I've gone just over this.
I believe you.
First, let me tell your audience this: the first time you hear someone call it the Electoral College, laugh at them and ask them if they'd like to pull your finger or something, because that's about all they're worth. And just walk away, because if they don't even know what the word is, why listen to anything else they have to say about the matter?
No, that's true.
It's Electoral College. You got that correct. It's Electoral College, and there's a reason for that.
Because we're talking about electors. Yes, electors.
Right. And this may shock some people, probably not your audience, but there are a lot of people in America who think they vote for president every 4 years, and they do not. What they do is they go and they vote for their state's electors. Okay? You go down and you vote, and it says Trump or Obama or whatever. But what you're really voting for is not President Trump, but Texas will have a slate of electors that are picked to go vote for president. Okay? And this is a political position. You don't get it. You don't run for it. You're appointed, and well, maybe some places might elect him, but usually it's political appointments through party. Okay, and what happens is, like, the Republican Party would have a set of let's say the presidential race that's coming up. You got Trump and, let's say, Biden.
Okay.
So in Texas, we would have the Republican Party would put together a slate of electors that are supposed to go and vote for the Republican candidate, and the Democrats will put a slate of electors together that are supposed to go and vote for the Democrat candidate. All right, and then depending on who gets the popular vote in Texas, then that slate of electors is elected, and they go to vote at the state capitol on a certain day. And I used to have all those days and things memorized. If that's important to you, go look it up, because it's there. But,
okay.
And every state's got a slightly different timing and framing and stuff because of travel and stuff. Like Texas had a much larger window of travel time because it takes, today 2 days in a car to cross Texas. So, you can imagine back when it was a covered wagon or a horse, you had to give them ample time to cross the state to get down to the Capitol. And anyway, and this is why there's those delays. People think why we elected. Why isn't it just happening now? Why do we have November election, but it doesn't happen until January? Well, that's because it took the electors time to get to the capitals and vote, and then the states would then certify the vote and send it to the Vice President of the United States, whose job in the Senate is to read out those votes and to certify the next elected president, which a lot of people may not know. They think the Vice President doesn't have anything to do, but that's one of his jobs. And then, now that took time, so that's why we have the time from November to January. A revision of that may be in order, with the speed of technology today, but tradition speaks too, and I'd be okay with either. If there was a good, sound reasoning for changing it, I'd be acceptable to it. Now, the Electoral College is the electors meeting and voting for president. Okay, and that's kind of important because it's part of the protection and separation of powers and whatnot. For instance, your amount of electors in your state for the college depends on the number of representatives and senators you have. And if we were to get rid of the Electoral College, then places like, and this was, the Constitution almost did not become, I may be sounding like I'm rambling and jumping back and forth, and I probably am, but as ideas occur to me again, I think about this. The Constitution almost did not pass muster when being written, let alone going through ratification, because these small states were afraid the big states, places like Pennsylvania and New York, would just run over them.
Yes.
Delaware, Rhode Island and stuff, they would have no power because the big states would have all these people and money, and they would just dictate to the smaller states what was going to happen. And so one of the compromises was that every state, and this was the compromise was the bicameral compromise, and that is that we would have a House of Representatives and a Senate, a low and a high house, and that every state would get 2 senators, no matter what size, and that those senators' job was to represent their state. So if you came from Texas or California or Delaware or Rhode Island, then your job as a senator was to protect the rights and interests of your state. Now, we amended the Constitution and directly elect senators now instead of the state legislature picking them and sending them to Congress to protect the state. And so now the senator is nothing but a supernumerary representative who just happens to have to be elected in general in his state as opposed to winning a district like a representative has to. And so we have, and this was done on purpose to destroy the power of the Senate and to destroy the power of the smaller states so that the bigger states could dictate what was going to happen, i.e. Florida, New York, and California. I leave Texas out of that because Texas wasn't interested in grabbing power from other states and people. This was a liberal thing, a progressive thing, not a conservative thing. So the Electoral College was there to protect the interests of small states and to make sure that the larger states could not, hurt them. But it gave the big states power too. For instance, something like Texas, we have 32, 36 electoral delegates for the college. And that's because we get 2 senators, and then we have a crap ton of people in this state, legal. We have even more illegal.
Yes.
But, we have a crap ton of legal people. And therefore, we have something like close to 36, I don't know what it is, electoral delegates. And then you got New York, which used to have a lot more than Texas, but so many people, so many damn Yankees have moved down from there to Texas and turning this state blue or purple, that they've lost power in New York. We've gained it, but we've also gained the Yankees. So it's a win, loss thing for us. But anyway, you got California. which of course is, I think, number one still, and then Texas, and then New York, and then Florida in electoral delegates. But all states are represented by the Electoral College, and it's based on the number of representatives and senators, and that's part of that compromise. So, you know, big states and little states are both protected somewhat under Electoral College. But here's something. You're running for president, okay? And you have to make a decision because you have a limited time to run for president and a limited budget.
Okay.
As every candidate has, right? So, are you going, let's say we got rid of Electoral College for whatever reason, because the left was right and we don't need pesky constitutional protection. So we'll just get rid of that. Now, you're a presidential candidate. You're running in the next election, and you have to make a decision. All right? We still are going to elect people in this country. We just don't have an electoral college, so we're not going to hire electors anymore to do it. So now people will directly be voting for president like they do for their senator in each, in each state. So are you going to go to Rhode Island, who has like 12 people living in it that aren't drunk on rum, or are you going to go to California and Texas and Florida and New York? You know, you got to make a choice with your time and your money. And you have to win by popular vote now, like Al Gore did, evidently. So, or Hillary, or whoever. So, if you're going to win by popular vote, are you going to stop by the states that have, 2 million people in it, or are you going to go to the states that have 1 billion people in it? What would you choose?
Well, you want to be where the power and the strength is, where the population is, because that's
right.
Where the power is going to go.
Right. And so if you have to win the popular vote, you might as well go where the population is. And the population are in the big states. So, as the Democrats like to call it, flyover country would be ignored. Oklahoma would be ignored. Utah would probably be ignored. Vermont, well, maybe Vermont wouldn't, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. Rhode
Yes.
Island would be ignored.
Yep.
And all of a sudden now these states have no influence politically. Their senators already don't represent them in Congress because we nuked that with the amendment process. And now we don't have an electoral college. So now there's absolutely no need for political candidates to kowtow to these little states and play the electoral college game of getting 270 electoral delegates strung together somehow, which is what they have to do right now. They have to figure out, okay, well, I'm going to have to go to Oklahoma and get their 3. I'm going to have to go to Utah and get their 3 if I'm going to put this all together. This is how Trump won. He broke the Rust Belt, right? The Democrats were safe in their little Rust Belt where, all the union people who now no longer have jobs because the Democrats put them all out of jobs because of all the regulations of the auto industry and the steel industry, et cetera. And because of that, they all turned and voted for Trump, who was known to be a builder and was going to revitalize the steel industry and the manufacturing industry and the car industry. And he's done exactly those things. And now these people are all back to work. But the Democrats, unprecedentedly, lost the Rust Belt in that election. And they were shocked. Now, more importantly, the willing dupes in the media were shocked, too, that Trump won the Rust Belt and the Democrats lost it. Now, if we got rid of the Electoral College, who would care? Not enough people there. Not enough to mess with votes, and they don't care. So, your whole strategy would change, your political positions would change, your ability to influence government and protect your own citizens would change. And dare I say, it won't take long for people that get screwed over to figure out that if they get a U-Haul, they can move to places like California or Texas and have influence again and protection. So the shift in this country would become massive.
Let me ask you about this. This is a current movement, courtesy of the Democrats. They're calling it the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And it just in, I think it was February, it managed to sucker in the state of Colorado. And I think now there are 12 states, plus D.C., if I'm not mistaken, that are in that compact. The deal with that is that what they want to do by this is it calls on the state signatories, whoever attends and signs on to this thing, to pledge their electoral votes in presidential elections to whichever candidate wins the national popular vote. So we know the Democrats are doing this. We know why they're doing this. One stat that I want to prove, that I want to point out to people, and that I already wrote about in the chat room, is the presidential election has only been decided by the Electoral College in five instances. That's it in the entire history of the United States. However, this is what the Democrats are crapping car parts behind. It occurred with George Bush in 2000 versus Al Gore, and it occurred in 2016 with Donald John Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head. Those are the two out of only 5 instances that they're complaining about, so they want to turn everything upside down because of those specific incidents. So, that having been said, is that compact constitutional? Can they do that? Can they get away with that?
Well, I do not believe it is constitutional. We have a system in place, and the candidates all run on that system. So Al Gore and Hillary Clinton knew that they had to win the Electoral College, not the popular vote.
Yes.
You know, and so to cry foul at the end is to say, I want the rules changed because I didn't get my way. You know, boo-hoo. And there's a reason why that happened, by the way. And this is, I think, another way of showing that God exists. Because if you look at the electoral map, the entire country is red. Well, first red. It used to be blue. Republicans were blue and the Democrats were red until they got tired of being associated with communism. Because they're communists and they want socialism, right? And they got tired of being associated with that, so they changed the media. I forget which president was. It was Reagan. It was Reagan. All of a sudden, Republicans became red and Democrats became blue because Reagan was talking about the Red Scare and the Russians and building the military. And you know, red is associated with communism. And all of a sudden, the Democrats are like, we don't want to be red. So the media changed the colors for them. And you go back and look, you'll see I'm right on that. So anyway, there's something that's stupid and vain, you know, and this is how the Democrat Party is.
Yes.
But we have a system in place. And if you look at the map today, Republican red, the entire map is, and yet there's this little tincture of blue on the coastal lines and up like in Michigan, those areas, right, where all the Muslims are. And if they're not Democrats, what are they? So, this is why they're worried, because they can't win all of the people's votes in all of these states in this country. You know, say 40, 45 states. They can't win. But they can win the ones that are just jam-packed full of libtards. And they can't figure out how to get the libtards to go out into, you know, flyover country, because the libtards all want to live in New York and Boston and California and Oregon and Seattle, Washington state. And so they can't get the libtards to move out into the flyover country, so they can't win the Electoral College. And the Electoral College is the majority of the states of this country are saying, we want this person for president. The popular vote, because all these people are stacked up in these high-rise apartments, you know, and skyscrapers or whatever you guys call them, you know, in New York and California. And if you take New York and California out of the picture, they don't win the popular vote. As a matter of fact, I think if you just take Los Angeles out of the Electoral College from the last election, I think if you just remove LA's votes, the Democrats don't win the popular vote. It's just that small.
It's
right?
funny.
And this is what they're whining over. Yeah.
It's funny you should mention that, because I happen to be looking at a story regarding the Electoral College where the mass of the states that are in blue, which is the bulk of the states, have a smaller population than L.A. County. The Electoral College ensures that all the rest of those states have the same voice as a smattering of coastal elites. In other words, this massive country could all come down to people who are living in an area the size of L.A. County. And all the rest of the
what we're talking about.
Yes, all the rest of the United States and those people living in those states, well, as far as the Democrats are concerned, they can all go to hell.
Right. And see, these elitists are angry because they spend a lot of good time and money to buy the politicians they want in the Democrat Party, and they're not winning at the national office. And this is pissing them off because they're not getting a return on their investment. And this is what's prompting the move to get rid of the Electoral College, because it's protecting us exactly as it was designed to do, to keep a handful of the elites in this country from determining the rest of us how we're going to live with our legal representative government, which we hire as managers, not as overlords and masters, which is what they've become. And Electoral College is the only thing left protecting us, because just about everything else has been fixed with stupid legislation by Congress or state governments, or we've changed things with amendments like electing senators and a few other things. And so this is why it's so critical to maintain and keep. And anybody that argues against it, you know what? Venezuela is ready for you. Argentina is ready for you. Move on down. Go see how great this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't they, though?
Now, can the states come together in a convention and have signatory obligation? I don't know if it could be enforced. Maybe. But the only way it would happen is if, say, Colorado, because you mentioned that one, goes and signs this and then obligates its electoral delegates to do the same. Now, here's the deal. If the Democrats are in charge of Colorado, but Trump wins the popular vote of Colorado, then the Republicans send the electoral delegate slate, not the Democrats. And if the Republican slate of electors, they don't, they're not Democrats. They weren't part of the signatory obligation. I don't see how the state could force a political party, especially a minor political party, to accept the will of the majority party in a situation like this. Because, the Constitution clearly has very few rules about elections. The states get to decide most of it. But in this case, the Electoral College is in there, and it's kind of in writing. And I don't see how legally the Democrat Party could force the Republican Party to instruct its delegates to vote for the Democrats, is what you would be having them do. You see?
Yes.
And so I don't see how that would have any standing in court. It doesn't mean they wouldn't try, but, look what they did with Al Gore in Florida. They had no standing there, and eventually that's what the Supreme Court had to go in there and rule and say, this is idiotic, there's no standing. Yank this crap out. The Electoral College is in place, and that's the rules. And this has already been decided once. So I don't see how it could be enforceable unless it was voluntary. And it'd be voluntary as if in Colorado, the Democrats are in power, they sign this thing, and they say this is what we're going to do, and then the Democrat candidate wins the popular vote of the state. Then the state can the state will send the electoral delegates of the Democrat Party, and they can have instructions on what to do. And here's something kind of interesting. I think there are a few states that have rules on their electoral delegates. For instance, some of these rules are like the first vote or the first two votes, you will vote the way the state voted. Say for Trump, right? And Texas. So our electoral college goes and votes. Well, the delegates or the electors must vote for the president the first time for Trump, and maybe even the second. I don't remember what the rules are, and every state has a little bit different. Excuse me. But they have instructions, right? But after that, an elector is free to vote their conscience. All right, and this stems all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, which may be one of the 5 times the Democrats are listing as electoral college deciding things, even though it was a vote in Congress that decided it, not the electoral college. These votes, people were locked in, and then they were given permission to vote their conscience after so many rounds of voting and deadlock and whatnot. And then it wasn't until John Adams made that compromise that Jefferson got in.
There's so many questions that I have for you. We're at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to have to take a break. Professor Michael Jones, who we've been listening to for an hour and a half now, and I thank you very kindly for your extra time. Would you be willing to come back, sir? Because I have a ton of questions for you, especially for the folks at the new network, because they've been asking a lot of questions in the chat room, too. So...
yeah, call me next Thursday. I'll do it.
Okay, great. All right. Bingo. There we go. Okay. It's set next Thursday.
All
Folks, this is Professor Michael Jones, constitutional scholar, knows his stuff about the Constitution. I have a ton of questions left. And if you have any questions that you'd like me to ask him, ask me in chat right now, and I'll make sure that I rate them down and I note them. And so thank you ever so kindly for staying up so late, sir, because let's see, right now it's after 11:30 where you are right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 11:30. And you assume I'm awake. I actually went to sleep about 40 minutes ago.
Okay. All righty. Folks, this is Professor Michael Jones. Thank you ever so kindly for being on here tonight. We're going to take a break, be right back, and then have I ever got some stories for you. Folks, don't go away.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern. Only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's the final half hour, the final segment of the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. That was a great interview with Professor Michael Jones, who already said he's willing to be on next Thursday night. What a great catch. Tons of other questions to ask him. Tentatively, I announced this in the chat room, but for those listening live or in podcast, at this point, tentatively, I have Kurt Schlichter returning to the Saloon next Tuesday night. And I think something similar to he's going to unload on the Mueller report as well as other things. Now, I teased this earlier at the beginning of the show that there were a couple of breaking stories. One of them is a clear national story. The second one is a story that I don't think has gotten out yet. You're going to hear it here first. I don't think anybody else has picked it up, because you'd have to go to a strange little teeny winky website to figure this out, and I found it, and I'm going to tell you folks about it, and I find it extremely interesting. Now, yes, it's local. It's a local issue, but it also has national implications because of what occurred just this week, just this Monday, as a matter of fact. I went to a site called the IPBA, and the IPBA is the Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association. So it's the IPBA.org. Or excuse me, I got that wrong. If you want to verify that what I'm going to tell you is correct, it's the ILPBA.org, which is the Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association, and I think you understand where it is that I'm going. This is an official statement that was released today by the Illinois Prosecutors Association, the Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association, let me get that correct. The IPBA, this is an official release. This is their official position. IPBA statement on Jussie Smollett case dismissal. That should tell you something right there. The Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association serves as a voice for nearly 1,000 frontline prosecutors across the state who work tirelessly towards the pursuit of justice. The events of the past few days regarding the Cook County State Attorney's handling of the Jussie Smollett case is not condoned by the IPBA, nor is it representative of the honest, ethical work prosecutors provide to the citizens of the state of Illinois on a daily basis. To the reverse of that, the IPBA is condemning Cook County State Prosecutor Kim Foxx because what she did, they said, is not condoned by the IPBA. And they also think that it's dishonest and unethical. They say it is not representative of the honest, ethical work prosecutors provide to the citizens of the state of Illinois on a daily basis. The manner in which this case was dismissed was abnormal and unfamiliar to those who practice law in criminal courthouses across the state. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges alike do not recognize the arrangement Mr. Smollett received. Even more problematic, the state's attorney and her representatives have fundamentally misled the public on the law and circumstances surrounding the dismissal. This is a huge slap in the face to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. The public has the right to know the truth, and we set out to do that here. I'm going to read the whole thing. There are a whole bunch of sections in here that they quote, and I'm not going to go into them. You can go to the ILPBA site, ilpba.org, read all that stuff yourself. But I'm going to read this entire press release, absent the statutes that are involved, because you need to know what happened and how underhanded and unethical and corrupt, essentially, is that office under Kim Foxx. I went into a whole bunch of things last night about that on the Shad Show. So I want to continue with this statement. This is their official position. When an elected state's attorney recuses herself from a prosecution, Illinois law provides the court shall appoint a special prosecutor, section such and such. Typically, the special prosecutor is a neighboring state's attorney, the attorney general, or the state appellate prosecutor. Here, the state's attorney kept the case within her office and thus never actually recused herself as a matter of law. Stop. She told us it was her official word that she had recused herself from the Jussie Smollett case. Now we find, according to this, that was entire bullshit. The state's attorney kept the case within her office and thus never actually recused herself as a matter of law. Additionally, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office falsely informed the public that the uncontested sealing of the criminal court case was mandatory under Illinois law. This statement is not accurate. Translated, she lied in public. She lied. Do you want to hazard a guess as to whether or not she's a Republican or a Democrat? I think you know the answer to that. They continue. To the extent that the case was even eligible for an immediate seal, that action was discretionary, not mandatory, and only upon the proper filing of a petition to seal. See a section. They refer to another section. For seals not subject to blah, 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 the process employed in this case by the state attorneys effectively denied law enforcement agencies of legally required notice, and another quotation, and the legal opportunity to object to the sealing of the file. See this case. The state's attorney not only declined to fight the sealing of this case in court, but then provided false information to the public regarding it. Translation, she lied. Her office lied. This is an official proclamation by this association. The appearance of impropriety here is compounded by the fact that this case was not on the regularly scheduled court call. The public had no reasonable notice or opportunity to view these proceedings, and the dismissal was done abruptly at what has been called an emergency hearing. To date, the nature of this purported emergency has not been publicly disclosed. The sealing of a court case immediately following a hearing where there was no reasonable notice or opportunity for the public to attend is a matter of grave public concern and undermines the very foundation of our public court system. She lied, and she's manipulating the court system for political means. That's what they're saying. I'll say it for them. Lastly, the state's attorney has claimed this arrangement is available to all defendants and not a new or unusual practice. There has even been an implication it was done in accordance with a statutory diversion program. These statements are plainly misleading and inaccurate. Translated, she lied. She lied to the citizens of Chicago. She lied to the Chicago Police Department. She lied to the citizens of the state of Illinois. And she lied to everyone who listened to her across the nation and the globe. These statements are plainly misleading and inaccurate. This action was highly unusual, not a statutory diversion program, and not in accordance with this is in italics in this release. This is not in accordance with well-accepted practices of states' attorneys' initiated diversionary programs. The IPBA supports diversion programs and recognizes the many benefits they provide to the community, the defendant, and to the prosecuting agency. Central to any diversion program, however, is that the defendant must accept responsibility. To be clear here, this simply was not a deferred prosecution. She lied. Prosecutors must be held to the highest standard of legal ethics in the pursuit of justice. The actions of the Cook County State's Attorney have fallen woefully short of this expectation. Through the repeated misleading and deceptive statements to the public on Illinois law and circumstances surrounding the Smollett dismissal, the state's attorney has failed in her most fundamental ethical obligations to the public. The IPBA condemns these actions, meaning she lied, it's corrupt, and she's unethical. But, folks, you knew that. It's Chicago and it's Illinois. This irregular arrangement was an affront to prosecutors across the state, the Chicago Police Department, victims of hate crimes, and the people of the city of Chicago and Cook County. We strongly encourage our members and the public to review the National District Attorneys Association statement on prosecutorial best practices in high-profile cases. Best regards, Lee Rupus, President, Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association. This, rightly so, was a massive slap in the face meant for and aimed at Kim Fox, a black female whose job it is, I'm certain, I get to have my opinion, is to counter, this was to counter, I believe, the Mueller report. Because Democrats didn't get what they wanted, so she's going to met out some of her own personal social justice warrior information. She's going to met out her own brand of justice. And hoaxers, basically what she said is, come one, come all, to the city of Chicago. It'll cost us close to $250,000 to do an investigation. And at the end of the day, what the Chicago Police Department did, what the detectives did, what the rest of the DA's investigators did, and what all aligned agencies and people did was all bullshit. It was for nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so I think you can understand why even Rahm Emanuel, of all people, who said you never let an emergency go to waste, and up to this point he certainly hasn't. He's not long for his mayoral ship, shall we say. Even Rahm Emanuel came out and said, in a word, this is bullshit. Now, I think the police inspector, the supervisor, they call him let's see. He's not a police chief. His name is Eddie Johnson. But I want you to hear what he happened to say initially about what happened when Smollett's case was just kicked to the curb.
I'm sure we all know what occurred this morning. My personal opinion is that you all know where I stand on this. Do I think justice was served? No. Where do I think justice is? I think this city is still owed
Okay, come on.
an apology. And let me digress for a moment. When I came on this job, I've been a cop now for about 31 years. When I came on this job, I came on with my honor, my integrity, and my reputation. If someone accused me of doing anything that would circumvent that, then I would want my day in court, period, to clear my name. I've heard that they wanted their day in court with TV cameras so America could know the truth, but no, they chose to hide behind secrecy and broker a deal to circumvent the judicial system. My job as a police officer is to investigate an incident, gather evidence, gather the facts, and present them to the state's attorney.
The funny thing is, when you look at this video and you also look at the video of Rahm Emanuel, this isn't some kind of a teleprompted, scripted kind of thing where they're just bleating out sentences. They mean this. They're pissed off. Rahm Emanuel is pissed off. And by the way, Eddie Johnson is the superintendent of the Chicago police, not the police chief. That's the word I was looking for, the superintendent. They're pissed off because all their work was for nothing. This is from Chicago PD, of all places. And they're not happy. What kind of a relationship do you think now is being fostered between the prosecutor in the city of Chicago and the Chicago Police Department who brings cases before it? Do you think this has been shattered? I certainly do.
That's what we did. I stand behind the detective's investigation. I'll let Mary Emanuel comment further.
And that's the end of that. There are some other things that you need to know about this as well. And like I say, if you want to find out this, and let me pose this question to you. Do you think tomorrow, well, right now on the East Coast, it's already it's about 10 minutes to 1 a.m., so it's already tomorrow. It's Friday on the East Coast. So, folks on the East Coast, do you think you're going to hear about the statement from the IPBA, the Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association, about Cook County Kim Foxx? Do you think that you're going to hear this bleated out on any of the major American media maggots, satellites, on their cables, on their TV shows, on their newspapers? Do you think this is going to be above the fold, page one? Or do you think they'll bury it? Or do you think they'll even mention it at all? Or will they give it a minute? Will Mediaite be able to count the seconds to which this is addressed? My guess would be keep your ears open tomorrow, Friday, to see if this is referred to at all. My guess would be no. But I wanted you to hear it right now, tonight. So tomorrow, just for the hell of it, dig around a little bit. You can go and I'm going to give this to you so that you can see that I'm not making this stuff up. The IPBA, Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association, essentially slapped the crap out of Kim Foxx and called her a liar involved in corruption for political motives. That's what this says. That's what that means. If you want to find it, like I said, go to ilpba.org. ilpba.org. I'm not making this stuff up at all. Will we hear about it tomorrow? No. The other thing that has not been covered very much is that the Chicago Police Union has now called for a federal probe into what they consider to be a highly, highly suspicious conduct of the prosecutor, and that they intervened on behalf of Michelle Obama's ex-aide and texted the Empire family. Jussie Smollett. Now remember, the prosecutor, Kim Foxx, said that Jussie Smollett has already done community service. He's paid his due. He's done his time. Has he not? Well, what did he do? And where did he go? Here's an article. Here's a headline. Jussie Smollett's community service. This is what it was. And it was onerous. He did 18 hours with Jesse Jackson's organization. Oh my God, that was tedious. He did 18 hours service over 2 days. It would be oppressive to make him do 18 hours at one sitting with Jesse Jackson's organization, the Rainbow Push Coalition. That was okay with Kim Foxx. That's what occurred. Conjure that. Now, will we get a federal case out of this? It might go to the FBI. We'll know probably a little bit more on Monday. But like I say, ilpba.org, put that in the back of your head and see if anyone mentions the mighty smiting that occurred of Kim Foxx by her very own professional bar association, who essentially called bullshit on her. I'm going to be going here in about 4 minutes. I have one final story. This came out tonight. This is the national story that I was alluding to. And I find this, again, a massive amount of, oh, God, when I saw this, is like the Beezy's heart burbled over with schadenfreude. The headline is, FBI must hand over documents used to keep the Comey memos secret. A judge rules. What does that mean? Over the objections of the FBI, a federal judge on Thursday, today, sided with CNN in an ongoing lawsuit seeking to make public what the Bureau said in 2 secretive court declarations in October of 2017 as part of its aggressive efforts to keep memos documenting former FBI Director James Comey's meetings with President Trump hidden. Comey's memos, whose existence was ultimately leaked, which is why I call him Jimmy the Leak, with Comey's knowledge, and which were later obtained by Congress in redacted form. Congress wasn't able to see these memos. Became a catalyst for the appointment of a special counsel, Robert Mueller. We had his report released this Monday. CNN filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, and later filed a lawsuit seeking access to the memos. In the original complaint, CNN noted FBI Section Chief David Hardy and FBI Deputy Assistant Director in the Counterintelligence Division David Archie, as well as an attorney in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office, promptly submitted an ex parte declaration to the federal court in Washington, D.C. as part of their argument that publicly releasing the memos would compromise an ongoing probe. Those declarations were sealed, but whatever Hardy, Archie, and the special counsel lawyer said, the court indicated that it found their private explanations compelling. On April 19, 2018, the FBI turned over redacted versions of the memo to Congress and then provided them to the media, raising questions, CNN argued, as to what the FBI had told the court the previous year and what had suddenly changed. Now, Washington District Court Judge James Boasberg, an Obama appointee who was also tapped by Chief Justice John Roberts for a seat on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act Court, issued an order yesterday, demanding the FBI hand over clean and redacted copies of the documents in dispute here, apparently including the Comey memos and documents related to the declarations. So I think we have a very clear and obvious indicator of just how corrupt D.C. is. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if Hillary Clinton had been elected, the massive amount of information that we wouldn't have the slightest idea of today? And I still submit, this is the tip of the iceberg, and there is so much more to reveal. And I think it will be revealed.
Monsieur has unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I want to say thank you very much for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, BZEP. Also on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Thanks to Redcon One Media for simulcasting my show, courtesy of Big Sarge. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, the Boeing Company. Yes, I still trust them. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And also Pratt & Whitney Engines, providing thrust you can trust. Tiaras by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than an hour. Thanks to my first hour and a half guest, Professor Michael Jones. Thanks to you for listening live. Thanks to you for being in chat. Thanks for listening in podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy day or night to do so. It's Thursday, so have a great weekend. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Come back Tuesday.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.